Halo is a weapon. Your prophets are making a big mistake.
Your ignorance already destroyed one of the sacred rings, demon. It shall not harm another.
If you will not hear the truth, then I will show it to you.
Welcome back to part 2 of the complete story of humanity in the Halo universe. While the old human soul of Chakas, placed in the monitor body, had to have large portions of his memory suppressed and compartmentalized as a precaution against a potential return of the Flood, in their AI corrupting logic plague that converted Mendicant. Following the activation of the Halo array to combat the Flood, 343 Guilty Spark found himself isolated in a galaxy devoid of sentient beings. While overseeing Installation 04 through the ages, signs of rampancy began to manifest, stemming from profound loneliness, exacerbated after losing contact with other installations. During this involuntary solitude, reflections on his experience with the Forerunners, their confrontations with the Flood, and contemplations on all the decisions they made, and those he felt they should have made, were constantly running through his new mind. And throughout this period, Guilty Spark's consciousness experienced substantial fragmentation, dividing into multiple distinct personality streams, serving as a countermeasure to delay the onset of rampancy. After undergoing 2 hibernation cycles, Spark discovered a sense of boredom, a feeling he didn't think possible for a monitor. Conscious of the potential risks of deviating from operational focus, he sought distraction elsewhere. Spark would conduct experiments in this installation, displacing entire segments of matter from the ring's surface into the void, just so that he could keep himself busy reconstructing them later. The ancient humans, like the modern, are at their core social animals, evolved from deep tribal bonds, and as Guilty Spark was fighting off madness, his distant relatives on Earth were clawing their way back into space. Guided by the Gaius, many elements of that first, pre-de-evolution humanity were expressing themselves like ghosts in the biological machine. The ancient concept of Dawa Madtu would come to be known as the Tao, a way of going with the eternal flow of the universe. While many other religions rose, just like we saw with the mostly polytheistic Archaeohomina, all human groups were obsessed with the stars, speaking of great beings that dwelled there, sharing visions of the goddess that guided them, and warning of the cosmic judgment that could befall them, like the destruction of the Tower of Babel that scattered a once unified humanity, and worst of all, the great destruction of the Flood. And of all the various types of human, the Homo sapien would reclaim this world and establish a global community that slowly made their first way to the moon, then Mars. To understand how this happened, in the history of humanity from the 21st century on, it all begins with the United Nations. As the 21st century dawned, and with it, the reality of human space exploration and colonization, the political landscape on Earth underwent significant changes. The dream of venturing out into the cosmos and establishing settlements on distant planets became a symbol of hope, ambition, and unity for many. Yet the political framework supporting these endeavors remained fractured, with individual nations vying for control, seeking influence and resources both on Earth and in the void of space. The United Nations, established in the aftermath of World War II, had greatly evolved by this time. Originally envisioned as a cooperative assembly to facilitate diplomacy and prevent future global conflicts, it had grown in stature and influence over all these years. The organization played a pivotal role in global decisions, overseeing multinational initiatives, especially in the context of space exploration. It served as a neutral platform where nations could discuss and negotiate space treaties, delineate territories on new worlds, and standardize colonization protocols. Despite the UN's authority and its push for a unified approach to space exploration, the dream of a single global government remained elusive. National pride, economic interest, historical rivalries, and differing political ideologies posed significant hurdles to complete unification. As humans reached outward, establishing colonies on Mars, the moons of Jupiter, and beyond, these new settlements also began to develop their own identities and political inclinations, further complicating the idea of a singular human governance system. The motivation for colonization was primarily driven by corporate interests rather than state-led endeavors. Unhindered by the complexities of international law on Earth, these corporations, especially those established on Mars, saw unbridled opportunities for innovation. Expansive research facilities mushroomed across the Martian terrain, pioneering advancements in bio and nanotechnologies. The breakthroughs achieved by these corporate entities were nothing short of revolutionary, leading to innovations ranging from medical marvels to novel energy storage solutions. However, this freedom also gave rise to excesses. Incidents of controversial genetic manipulations and ethically questionable experiments became a matter of concern, leading to worries of a future where corporate entities might wield unchecked power. Recognizing the potential pitfalls of this trajectory and aiming to rein in the unrestrained advancements, the UN stepped in again. In 2165, the scope of the UN Genetic Rights Act was broadened to encompass all the colonies, setting a clear ethical boundary on all genetic research. This landmark legislation subsequently paved the path for the introduction of the Mortal Dictata Act, which showed humanity's commitment to ethical genetic practices. Just the introduction of this act gives us a look at the moral questions being posed by the rapid acceleration of biotech in this age. By seeing what they banned, we know what the people of the time were worried about, and there are some very specific sections that stand out. 1A, 3A. A human being shall be defined as a person recognized and accepted by a reasonable layperson as being human on the basis of form, behavior, or external appearance. And no authority shall be permitted to use any element of a genetic profile to exclude a person from that definition. 1A3B. A human being shall not be restricted, selected, or subjugated to discrimination on the basis of their genome or genetic profile, whether altered or unaltered. 1A3C. A human being shall not be brought into existence with the intent of providing biological material or research data for the use, treatment, or benefit of another. 1A3D. A human being shall not be subject to any commercial claim, patent, or restriction on the basis of any part of their genome or genetic profile, whether altered or unaltered. 3E. A human being, regardless of any engineering of their genome or introduction of non-human or artificial DNA, shall not cease to be classified as human under any circumstances. 3F. No human being shall be subjugated to genetic alteration except with their express and informed consent, or in the case of a person under the age of 18, with the consent of their legal guardian for the sole purpose of correcting a health defect in that child. A human being or part of thereof may not be owned by any individual or organization. 3H. A human being shall not be cloned. And so we can see that they are grappling with the idea of what a human is if many parts of their genome are being altered, introducing things from non-human animals and purely artificial DNA, which could lead to discrimination from these advanced humans seeing themselves as superior, or normal humans seeing these as abominations, with many instances of discrimination going both ways. In the issue of corporations owning parts of your body that were created in a lab, certain biological abilities and enhanced organs would require enormous research and could have patent claims, and so part of people's bodies were said to be owned by corporations, all the way up to creating humans to act simply as organ farms, growing whole humans with the sole intent of transferring those organs to others. High-tech vampirism and the latest iteration of Saturn eating its own children, of course coming to the way of cloning humans. The UN Colonial Mortal Dictata to put an end to all of these horrors. And it was not a mere replication of earthbound laws, but it was an evolution, adapting to the new challenges brought about by interstellar colonization, seeking to emphasize the sacrosanct nature of human individuality, and try and enshrine a sense of what it meant to be human. Though many of course opposed these restrictions, citing that all of these advancements came out of needs, some of which were more specific needs to colonists, who lived in much harsher environments than those on Earth, and that ironically, in some ways, the mostly secular UN had been repeating the mistakes of religious organizations of the past, opposing everything from studying human anatomy to gene alterations that enabled us to get insulin from pigs. Everything from surgery itself to curing diseases were all seen as abominations in their time, an unholy tinkering with the human body. And of course, like any legislation, the dictata's efficacy rested on its enforcement, and notably there were instances of profound breaches. Dr. Catherine Halsey, a brilliant but controversial figure in human history, openly admitted to transgressing the Act's parameters. Her intimate involvement in the Spartan II program, an endeavor that pushed the ethical boundaries in pursuit of superior soldiers, ignored many of the core principles of the dictata, and her audacious act of flash cloning parts of herself to birth the AI Cortana became another stark testament to the constant tension between progress and ethics, where humanity is constantly asking at what cost does progress come, and how far is too far. The latter half of the 22nd century was marked by escalating tensions and conflicts, both on Earth and its burgeoning colonies. The attack on the UN colonial advisors on Io in the year 2160 was not an isolated incident. It marked the ignition of a larger conflict known as the Jovian Moons Campaign. UN forces found themselves engaged in multiple theaters, from the dense jungles of Earth and the rainforest wars of 2162 to the distant orbits of Jupiter's moons. Recognizing the increasing threats of the era and the need for consolidated military efforts, the UN commissioned the formation of the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC, in the year 2163. The UNSC consisted of a highly organized and well-equipped amalgamation of naval and marine forces. The formation and aggressive policies of the UNSC drew inspiration from the geopolitical strategies of the United States in the early 21st century. The goal was clear: to establish a unified front for humanity, both in defense and in the pursuit of its colonial ambitions. By 2164, with tensions reaching a boiling point and a conglomerate of political, economic, and military interest at stake, Earth witnessed a massive mobilization of UN-backed militaries. This period of militarization culminated in the Interplanetary War, a conflict that would reshape humanity's approach to governance and security. The aftermath of the war led to a significant reshuffling of power structures. In 2170, the UN transitioned to form the UEG, or United Earth Government, asserting its position as the singular governing body for all of humanity. The UNSC, having proven its mettle in the conflicts, was elevated to serve as the primary military force of this new governance structure. While the UEG crafted policies, regulations, and grand strategies, it was the UNSC's responsibility to ensure these directives were implemented and adhered to, wielding the might of humanity's military prowess. By 2204, the domination of the UEG was indisputable. The previous conglomerate of supranational organizations, once independent nations and city-states, and various colonies and settlements in the Sol system had merged into a cohesive entity. This century would see a discovery that would open up the rest of the galaxy to the human species. But the dynamic would change again, with a discovery that would open up the rest of the galaxy to the human species, when Tobias Fleming Shaw and Wallace Fujikawa unveiled their groundbreaking slip space engine in April 2291. Few could fathom the massive impact it would have on the course of human history. The engine not only promised faster-than-light travel, but ushered in a new era of exploration and expansion for humanity. Though it wasn't perfect, there were issues stemming either from slipstream's inherent unpredictability or possible engineering challenges. The Translite engine functions by creating ruptures, aka wormholes, between normal space and an alternate plane known as slip space. The engine runs mostly off of the elements selenium and technetium, and creates ruptures by using high-powered cyclical particle accelerators to generate microscopic black holes. Because of their low mass, Hawking radiation gives them a lifetime of around a nanosecond, and at most potentially longer than a whole second, before they evaporate into useless thermal energy. In that nanosecond, the engine manipulates them into forming a coherent rupture between normal space and the slipstream. A major component of the drive is a set of slip space capacitors, presumably to accumulate enough power to run its particle accelerator. This process can take hours or days to complete, or somewhere as fast as 18 minutes or less for military warships. It would run off of a ship's fusion or antimatter reactors. The SFTE generates a quantum field, which prevents the ship and its occupants from being directly exposed to the 11-dimensional spacetime of slipspace, instead translating them into these foreign physics and squeezing them into a higher dimension. Maintaining the quantum field requires an enormous amount of constant calculations, with larger vessels requiring significantly more calculations than smaller ones. For example, the slipspace translations for a Phoenix-class colony ship require 4.3 quadrillion calculations of the quantum field per second. A human slipspace drive does not actually accelerate a spacecraft through slipstream space. This is performed by the ship's conventional reaction thrusters. Thus, ships with more powerful conventional engines are also faster within the slipstream. The coordination and plotting of slipspace jumps, referred to as astrogation, requires a navigation computer or an AI to successfully conduct. However, the basic jump parameters can be calculated by a human. Slipspace drives in human spacecraft are often seen as enigmatic black boxes. Once activated, they pose immense challenges in terms of maintenance or repair. Kurt-051 had reservations about these drives, not just due to the emitted radiation, but also because of how spacetime seems to distort around an active drive. Dr. Halsey's notes further warn of these hazards. She recollected incidents where technicians mysteriously disappeared during manual adjustments to a drive. These manual calibrations became somewhat of a necessity by the late 25th century, given the tendency of these superconducting magnets responsible for aligning the drive's acceleration coils to become misaligned. The electronic systems meant to oversee these magnets often faced glitches when close to the drive core, likely due to the distorted physics surrounding the mechanism, generating slipspace splinters in normal space. This phenomena can lead to the utter obliteration of both the drive and vessel housing it. Mechanical failures are not uncommon either, with terms like slip termination, preventable, or STP indicating mishaps typically caused by insufficient upkeep. If a slip space drive isn't securely installed, the results can be tragic, like the fate of a colony ship headed to the Cygnus system around 2550. Due to a maintenance oversight, the drive malfunctioned, transporting half the ship into the unknown and resulting in the loss of 700 souls on board. George 052's calculated induction of a slip space rupture to obliterate the Long Night of Solace while orbiting Reach would release a subsequent EMP wave that knocked out all satellites within its proximity. The inner colonies, established between 2362 and 2390, would be the next great leap for humanity. Going from that devolved state imposed on them by the Forerunners, they had now colonized further star systems, commencing with Odyssey's colonization of the Epsilon Erdani system. Earth's challenging living conditions at the time made the prospect of colonizing new worlds appealing, generating a large pool of colonization enthusiasts. Though venturing into interstellar space was a costly endeavor, the factor that necessitated the implementation of stringent physical and mental evaluation for potential colonists. Due to this, the inner colonies' populace became perceived as the cream of human society. By 2390, humanity had marked its presence on 210 celestial bodies, which encompassed a mix of planets, moons, and asteroids, each at different stages of terraforming and development. And as the colonies became more secure, the crystallization into bureaucracy came with it. As humanity now reached out to grow the outer colonies, the inner colonies began to transition into administrative, political, and economic hub of the UNSC, underpinned by the raw materials flowing in from the newer colonies. By the dawn of 2490, Reach, recognized as one of humanity's earliest colonial milestones, evolved into the paramount military stronghold of the UNSC. While the advancements and successes of the inner colonies are well documented, certain dark periods in their history remain shrouded in mystery. One event is the inner colony wars before the 26th century. Concrete details of this conflict remain scarce. However, it is known that unrestricted media coverage during this turbulent era gave rise to widespread civil unrest, almost pushing Earth society to the brink of collapse. Following the initiation of the first wave of human interstellar expansion from 2362 to 2390, the UEG embarked on a mission to colonize the outer colonies throughout the 25th century. The foundation stone of these endeavors was laid with the establishment of Illuvion in 2412, marking the beginning of the outer colonies. In contrast to the selective nature of the inner colonies' population, settlers in the outer colonies represented a broader spectrum of humanity, given the colonization contractors' primary motivations being resource acquisition instead of only selecting elite human resources. Settlers in these colonies spanned from ex-convicts granted amnesty to those who were unlawfully conscripted, and there were those who, either lawfully or as smuggled fugitives, journeyed to these far-flung colonies in pursuit of independence from Earth's dominion, further contributing to a populace with diminished allegiance to Earth. The deep-seated animosity harbored by outer colonists towards the UEG frequently erupted in acts of civil defiance. From tax evasion to establishing illegal settlements that were beyond the purview of official surveillance systems. A prevailing trend among outer colonials was the deliberate avoidance of registering vital records, like births and deaths, within the Colonial Administration Authority. As a result, they could not get a comprehensive gene registry, and the UEG did not make such registrations mandatory out of a fear of exacerbating tensions with the outer colonials. Despite these challenges, many in the outer colonies capitalized on the perks provided by the CAA, mainly the free vaccination program. This program, though ostensibly beneficial, did have an ulterior objective of covertly cataloging children's DNA, which aided in the identification of potential candidates for the Spartan 2 and Spartan 3 programs. The UEG's military arm, the United Nations Space Command, was at odds with the outer colonials, while the Colonial Military Authority garnered considerably more favor, particularly after it took the outer colonies under its wing in response to the UNSC's growing influence in the inner colonies. Due to escalating tensions and unrest, many residents on Earth and the inner colonies began to perceive the outer colonies as a growing threat. The UEG, along with its colonial governance and military branches, the CAA, sustained their military and economic dominion over the colonies by imposing trade restrictions and taxes. This, of course, spurred increasing discontent and stirred the radical factions advocating for secession. Amidst this growing dissent, inhabitants of Earth and the inner colonies worried that they would be eventually surrounded by the outer colonies. Wanting to strengthen their holdings cost more money. So the UEG, coupled with the CIA and Colonial Military Administration, initially started enforcing even more stifling trade limitations and levies. This reignited and intensified the smoldering discontent among the colonists, giving rise to a new generation of even more radical elements. Civilian insurgencies against the iron grip of the UEG would flare up between 2475 and 2483. The CMA's retaliations were quick and draconian, but this brute force approach only served to solidify the resolve against them, providing PR victories to the insurgents and making martyrs out of the dead civilians. While the fiery resistance against Earth's dominion was initially scattered amongst various rebel factions, it wasn't long before even the ruling entities of some outer colonies began to empathize with the insurgenist plight. The birth of the People's Occupation and Secessionist Union would signal a united front for dissenting voices. In 2487, these amalgamated entities handed over formal pleas for independence for a dozen worlds, delivering it to the UAG's doorstep. And this was followed by fragments of the CMA to start sympathizing with the rebel cause as well, secretly funneling information, financial aid, and equipment to the rebels. The exposure of such CMA sections' alliance with the insurgents in 2497, with the UNSC emerging as the central military sentinel across the colonies. And again, that's in 2497, but to understand the rise of the UNSC with a little more detail, let's go back a few years to 2491, when Dr. Elias Carver unveiled a series of theories to the UNSC High Command. He developed a projection algorithm predicting an imminent collapse of social order within the outer colonies. To counteract this impending chaos, Dr. Carver advised the immediate and extensive deployment of military forces by the UNSC. Critics of Carver contended that prolonged diplomatic efforts could achieve stabilization between the central worlds and outer colonies. Despite this, the UNSC military internalized the Carver findings, and it would become their guiding strategy for the ensuing years, opting to suppress significant rebellious activity with force. Within the same year, the UNSC revived the dormant Orion project, spawning the first cadre of super soldiers with the intent to meticulously eliminate rebel figureheads. Carver's theories were also pivotal in shaping the subsequent Spartan II program. By the time this program materialized, there was catastrophic civil strife between the inner and outer colonies. Arguably, the most infamous exemplification of the oppressive and severe tactics employed by the UNSC and CMA in order to suppress insurgencies in the late 25th century was the tragedy of Far Isle. In 2492, amidst these escalating tensions, Far Isle became one of the inaugural colonies to plunge into outright rebellion. Despite exhaustive efforts, the UNSC failed to curb the insurrection and would end up deploying nuclear arms, obliterating the entire colony and leaving no inhabitants alive. Following this, Code Bandersnatch was declared, signifying a significant radiological or energy-based disaster. Although the nuclear bombardment of a colony, the annihilation of Far Isle isn't typically recognized as the catalyst for the insurrection, its ramifications sparked a series of more extensive rebellions, playing a critical role in fueling the overall insurrectionist movement. The memory of Far Isle persisted as a symbol of enduring resentment towards the UNSC and UEG, inspiring anti-authoritarian sentiments in fiercely independent colonies like Venetia as late as the year 2553. The Callisto incident would be perceived as a flashpoint of the insurrection. It escalated the confrontations from sporadic and isolated colonial uprisings to wide-scale hostilities. The insurrectionists seized control of the UNSC Callisto, a corvette, while it was boarding merchant ships, leading to the death of all UNSC personnel on board. To retaliate, the UNSC dispatched a squadron consisting of 3 destroyers, the Jericho, Buenos Aires, and Las Vegas. On March 2, 2494, the squadron located the Callisto in the 26 Draconis system. Each ship launched 6 Ares missiles towards the rebellious destroyer, yet the Callisto skillfully evaded annihilation by taking cover behind an asteroid, where the insurrectionists detonated a pre-placed nuclear device, projecting debris toward the UNSC vessels. The Buenos Aires succumbed to the blast, with the remaining ships incurring severe damages. Second Lieutenant Preston Cole, the sole conscious or living officer on the bridge of the Las Vegas, assumed command. He conveyed a distress call to the Callisto, requesting medical assistance for the injured. When the Callisto aligned with the Las Vegas, aiming to capture it, Cole triggered the last Ares missile situated in the docking bay, inflicting severe damage on the Callisto. He then tried a bluff, unveiling the empty missile silos of the ship and demanding the surrender of the Callisto, allowing the AI of Las Vegas to seize control. In the aftermath of the Callisto incident, the flames of insurrection spread to additional systems, like the Eridanus, which experienced its own upheaval in the same year. This uprising was subdued 2 years later, involving the loss of 4 destroyers, but the insurgents found refuge in the asteroid belt and sustained their activities for numerous decades thereafter. With the escalation of conflicts, the outer colonies transformed into a war zone, witnessing clashes between the UNSC Navy and the improvised fleets of the rebels. In June 2501, the UNSC Gorgon, under the command of Preston Cole, pursued the Bellerophon, a captured UNSC frigate now in insurgents' hands, following it into the Theta Ursae Majoris system. The ensuing chase and confrontation saw the Bellerophon, now renamed the Bellicose, displaying extraordinary tactics to evade a MAC round. A brief series of mocking communications took place before Cole allowed the Bellicose to flee. Despite setting up traps and live fire systems over 3 months, Cole couldn't relocate the seized ship. A few months later, he remarried Lorraine Castilla, who was pregnant, and 8 months after his union with Castilla, in June of 2503, he received a message from Admiral Harold Stanforth. It was revealed that Oni had discovered the civilian identity of the Bellicose's captain to be Lorraine Castilla, who had been spying all this time on Cole. After he looked into it further, Cole came to see that Castilla had betrayed him, and would leave behind only a printed copy of the communication between the Bellicose and Gorgon. In January of the next year, the Bellicose encountered 4 destroyers in the Theta Ursae Majoris system, and was reportedly obliterated by the gravitational forces of a gas giant. Cole was subjected to a court-martial, accused of conspiring with the enemy and sharing confidential UNSC slipspace upgrades with Castilla, who is now potentially facing execution. However, intervention by Harold Stanforth saved him, resulting in his relocation to a desk job on Earth. But despite the reported destruction, the Bellicose had survived, lurking in the shadows before re-emerging with an insurrectionist fleet, and would decades later inflict severe damages to the Covenant in the Battle of Psi Serpentis. In 2513, the beginning of Operation Trebuchet marked one of the greatest operations in UNSC history. This 10-year endeavor, which cost hundreds of thousands of lives, aimed to eradicate the insurrectionists and restore order in the outer colonies once and for all. These clashes were particularly intense in the Eridanus system, focusing around Eridanus II and its neighboring space. Rebels in this region, advocating for the system's secession from the UNSC, constructed a makeshift navy from civilian vessels. Despite their lack of organization, they attempted to seize control of the system, and under the leadership of Colonel Robert Watts, these scattered Eridanus rebels reunified. In response, the UNSC deployed a fleet consisting of destroyers and carriers to quell the insurrection, easily subduing over 100 smaller rebel vessels. The survivors retreated to the asteroid belt of Eridanus Secundus, where they set up a fully operational asteroid base and resumed their raids by 2525. Concurrently, the 9th Marine Expeditionary Force launched a ground campaign on Eridanus II to apprehend the rebel leaders and suppress the populace. A mission under Lieutenant Colonel Ponder aimed at capturing a significant rebel leader in Elysium City, but it resulted in tragedy, leading to the deaths of the leader's family and Ponder's demotion and injury. The hostilities expanded to the Epsilon Erdani system, and by 2524, Operation Trebuchet had claimed over 1 million lives, a large majority of which were civilians. A Marine battalion backed by the corvette UNSC Bumrush, along with Hornets for air support, was stationed on the colony world of Tribute. Despite their efforts to neutralize rebel bomb makers near the city of Caspa, a catastrophic operation in June led to significant civilian and military casualties, with surviving members being reassigned to Harvest. Epsilon Eridani IV, another colony, experienced its own armed insurgency. Here, the renowned Admiral Preston Cole was assigned to suppress the rebellion. In 2525, a mission was undertaken by a team of Spartan II operatives, spearheaded by John 117. With the objective to infiltrate and apprehend the insurgent leader, Colonel Robert Watts. They gained access covertly via the Latin, and once inside, the discovery of luxury goods, including Sweet William cigars and champagne, all but confirmed Watts' presence on the ship. Proceeding to the rebel base, they took out the guards along their path and ultimately located Watts. His guards were eliminated, and the man was subdued, allowing the team to start their exit.
I am absolutely not getting in that damned box.
The extraction was marked by the use of explosives and resulted in significant civilian casualties, an outcome that was deeply regretted by the team. Later this same year, the Outer Rim breadbasket world of Harvest was attacked by the Covenant.
On February 3rd, at 14:23 hours, the Harvest orbital platform made long-range radar contact with this object. After that, all contact with Harvest was lost.
This signaled the start of the Human Covenant War, and thus Operation Trebuchet was suspended by the UNSC. The initial encounter between humanity and the Covenant took place on February 3, 2525. Initiated by the Kigyar ship and named by the great gods of irony themselves, a vessel that was named Minor Transgression. It stumbled upon a human vessel transitioning from slipspace and subsequently raided it. The initial altercation escalated to involve another human vessel, and Sif, the AI responsible for Harvest shipping operations, entered into these skirmishes, initially suspecting them to be the work of insurgents. She communicated her findings to Jalan El Signi, an undercover Oni agent. This led to the arrangement of a trap for the raiding parties, ensuing in a minor clash between UNSC sergeants and Kigyar privateers. When the Covenant escalated their engagement, bringing in more ships and a varied array of species, the UNSC proposed a meeting, hoping for reconciliation and potential trade. The Covenant, however, were solely focused on acquiring relics detected on Harvest, oblivious to the fact that humans were the relics they were seeking. This tense interaction spiraled into violence after an Ungoy from the Covenant's secondary force attacked a member of the colonial militia, leading to a full-scale skirmish and the Covenant's retreat. The implications of these relics sparked intrigue among the Sanshayum, with the Minister of Fortitude and the Vice Minister of Tranquility scheming to manipulate the find to herald a new age of reclamation and elevate themselves as hierarchs. This endeavor led them to the Oracle of High Charity, which was a fragment of the traitorous Forerunner AI Mendicant Bias. Mendicant shocked them by revealing that the relics were indeed humans, a species that were dubbed Reclaimers and the makers of the Oracle. Misinterpreting the revelation, the Sanshayum erroneously concluded that humans were the remnants of the Forerunners, but in a way they all were, not literally direct genetic descendants of the Forerunners, but as Reclaimers, the humans were the replacement of the Forerunners, and all were descendant from the Precursors. But if humans were to replace the Forerunners, in the worldview of the Covenant, did this mean that humans were to be worshipped as gods? Fearing mass rebellion if the populace learned of their potential exclusion from transcendence, the Sanshayum suppressed the truth and inducted the philologists into their ranks, leading to the ascent of the high prophets of truth, regret, and mercy. This set the stage for the major conflict between humans and the Covenant, with each species driven by their misinterpretations and concealed truths of their shared history in the enigmatic Forerunners. The freshly minted hierarchs, keen to conceal the revelation regarding the humans, proclaimed that humanity had desecrated a sacred reliquary on Harvest, thereby mandating the obliteration of the entire human race in order to preserve the sanctity and unity of the Covenant. The ensuing war began with the prolonged and unbalanced conflict at Harvest. Despite being heavily outmatched, the UNSC executed substantial delaying tactics, allowing the evacuation of a significant number of Harvest's civilians. Nonetheless, the outcome was inevitable, with the Covenant vessels proceeding to glass the planet's surface, a grim prelude to the cataclysmic conflict that would rage between these two civilizations. Following that point, the Covenant pursued a relentless assault against humanity, utilizing their luminaries to locate and devastate human colonies. These reverse-engineered Forerunner devices were able to find other Forerunner creations, including the Lifeworker-created modern humans. The efforts of the UNSC, although valiant, were often undercut by their technological and numerical inferiority, making every victory scarce and hard-won. The Covenant, focused on extermination, rarely engaged in full ground invasions. Their primary strategy involved neutralizing space defenses and reducing the planets to molten waste through orbital plasma bombardments. Human weaponry, primarily consisting of missiles and magnetic acceleration tools, were usually no match for the Covenant's energy shields and plasma arms. The occasional major victories for the UNSC were attributed to their superior tactics, their extensive use of nuclear arsenals, swift deployment of Spartans, and situations where UNSC tech and strategy outpaced the Covenant. One of the oddly effective but simple strategies was employing automated turrets, overwhelming them with large caliber bullets, and this would often work to stall Covenant advancements. However, as the war persisted and human resources dwindled, reliance on fixed installations became untenable against an enemy with superior orbital firepower, forcing a shift in tactics. The UNSC conceptualized a modular fire-based system in response to the Covenant's precision targeting of major military installations and the inability of standard systems to counter plasma bombardments. This system, derived from pre-existing colonization units, really showed how all of humanity was adapting to fight the overwhelming might of the Covenant. Within 6 years of the restless fighting, various sectors found the UNSC's nuclear arsenal nearly exhausted, though the reality of the war was kept hidden from the public by the UNSC for as long as possible, with only vague rumors ever spreading through these initial months. Recognizing the existential threat the Covenant posed to humanity, Vice Admiral Preston Cole was brought out of forced retirement. The issue of the insurrectionist-connected wife was something nobody cared about anymore, and he was assigned command by the UNSC Colonial Military Authority of what was, at the time, the most colossal fleet ever assembled in human history. Tasked with the reclamation of Harvest, Cole achieved the recapture of Harvest in 2526, and for the next 5 years, he pursued the Covenant across the outer colonies, meeting and beating them at Alpha Aruge, Djiboutis A, and Groombridge 1830. But the Covenant didn't give up that easy, and returned to Harvest, resulting in a 5-year series of sustained engagements with the UNSC. This period is when the Spartans emerged as some of humanity's paramount and most revered protectors, consistently altering the course of battles in humanity's favor. Their exceptional capabilities and battlefield successes instilled a deep-seated fear within the Covenant, who labeled the Spartans as demons. Despite their overwhelming numerical and technological superiority, the Covenant High Prophets by 2531 had come to comprehend the monumental logistical challenges in exterminating an entire sentient species without running the risk of leaving their own territories unprotected. Even with the undeniable might of the Covenant, the High Prophets recognized the UNSC military as potentially threatening to the Covenant's security, and hoping to bring about a more surgical strike, a quicker victory instead of a drawn-out war. The Prophet of Regret sent the Arbiter to Harvest to retrieve a buried Forerunner artifact located at the planet's North Pole. Responding to this, Preston Cole orchestrated a counteroffensive, spearheading a fleet including the UNSC Spirit of Fire and the UNSC Prophecy to Harvest, following a communication from an Oni Prowler. Despite significant losses, the battle did result in a victory. Discovering that under the leadership of Morami, the Covenant had unearthed Forerunner artifacts in the northern polar region, Captain James Cutter dispatched ground units to oust the Covenant forces. The ensuing intense conflict on the planet's surface allowed the UNSC forces to study the artifact, which was a star map, showing them that the Covenant had been led to another human colony, the popular tourist destination Arcadia. Their ambitions were to discover additional Forerunner artifacts on the planet. Although they only unearthed a complex of ruins, the knowledge acquired guided them to a shield world.
The war with the humans will require a great deal many more machines than we can currently muster.
I will take what we have.
And leave us defenseless? No. The Ancients will provide for us.
Then the Spirit of Fire trailed them and purged the Covenant from the planet. However, the seizure of a prominent civilian researcher, Professor Anders, by the Sangheili commander Morami, forced Captain Cutter to chase the Covenant to the newly unearthed Shield World without additional support. Within the Shield World, the Spirit of Fire's crew learned that the Covenant required Professor Anders to activate the Apex, aiming to seize the substantial fleet of Forerunner dreadnoughts contained within. Marines, aided by Spartan II Red Team, succeeded in rescuing the researcher and annihilated the Shield World by triggering a collapse of its internal star. During these intense fights, John Forge managed to eliminate the Arbiter, but the Prophet of Regret managed to evade capture. Despite the widely celebrated success at Harvest, the war was tilting dangerously against the UNSC's favor. Several colonies, such as Aradnus II, Dwarka, Bliss, Madrigal, Asmara, and Biko, had already been either obliterated by the Covenant's relentless glassing or abandoned and left deserted. It seemed like the only beacon for hope for the UNSC resided in the Spartan II program, though the scarcity of the Spartans rendered them incapable of substantially reversing the war's trajectory. In acknowledging this dire circumstance, the Office of Naval Intelligence gave the green light for the inception of the Spartan III program. Conceived by Colonel James Ackerson, this new generation of Spartans would undergo training focusing more on stealth and cooperation. They were designated for operations targeting high-value objectives, deemed impossible for even the most advanced units, engaging in strikes against high-priority Covenant targets. As the Covenant's devastating onslaught continued, leaving the majority of the outer colonies in ruins or deserted, the UNSC plunged into an economic crisis. The loss of crucial agricultural worlds resulted in widespread food shortages, sparking frequent food riots like those on Charybdis 9. At the same time, the Covenant initiated their advance into the inner colonies, prompting the UNSC to enact the Cole Protocol, United Nations Space Command Emergency Priority Order 098831A-1. stipulating that no vessel could inadvertently guide the Covenant to Earth or any other human habitats, and confined all space movement exclusively to UNSC naval vessels. This lockdown on civilians provoked a surge of insurrectionist activities, as the colonies viewed this as an infringement on their freedom of movement, escalating to instances where insurrectionists were found armed with Covenant weaponry, likely supplied by renegade Kigyar. Viewing this insurrectionist Covenant alliance as potentially the greatest threat of all, the UNSC was on high alert. Learning of the weapons' misuse, the Prophet of Regret branded them as heretical and dispatched the Elvadami to eradicate their source, and these renegade Kigyar would be destroyed at a secluded asteroid habitat called the Rubble. Humanity would discover this small infighting within the Covenant after the UNSC Midsummer Night pursued an insurrectionist fighter to the Rubble, revealing that pact between the insurrectionists and this faction of Kigyar. The crew of the Midsummer Night, including Lieutenant Jacob Keyes, was initially seized but managed to escape and assist Spartan II Grey Team, as well as the Rubble's native inhabitants, in thwarting the assault led by the Kigyar commander, Reth, while also keeping off Vadami's forces. This courageous effort enabled the rescue of 1 million civilians, who were then escorted to Falak Numa. It was later revealed that the Prophet of Truth had orchestrated the Kigyar and Human Alliance to uncover the location of Earth through pilfered navigation data, leading the Covenant to 2 more potential targets. By 2535, around the time of the Battle of Jericho 7, the UNSC had lost contact with or witnessed the destruction of most of the outer colonies. For the next 15 years, the war followed a grim and predictable trajectory, with the UNSC occasionally securing hard-fought victories on the ground, but continuously facing overwhelming space superiority by the Covenant. In 2537, the UNSC struck a substantial blow to the Covenant, destroying their manufacturing plant K-749 during Operation Prometheus, and triumphed again during the siege of the Atlas Moons within the same year. Yet the victories were shadowed by significant losses, including the fall of New Constantinople, the devastation of colonies at Leonis Minoris, and the annihilation of the Spartan III unit assigned to sabotage a Covenant base. The decade of the 2540s brought more hardship to the UNSC, witnessing the fall of renowned Spartan II Sheila 065 at the Battle of Miradem in 2544, suffering defeats at Actium in 2545, and during the fall of Arcadia, as well as additional losses on Paris 4 in 2549. Operation Torpedo in 2545 was a rare success, though even this would see the tragic loss of 298 Spartan IIIs, who were deemed as acceptable collateral by the UNSC High Command. The daring raid led by Spartan IIs on the 3rd Fleet of Glorious Consequence to rescue Dr. Halsey would be a crucial morale-boosting victory, proving that even at peak strength, the Covenant Empire could be defeated. One of these few triumphs and strategically crucial victories for the UNSC was the Battle of Psi Serpentis in 2543, more commonly referred to as Cole's Last Stand, marking the apparent death of the Admiral, while over 300 Covenant ships were destroyed, as UNSC nuclear missiles ignited within the atmosphere of Viperidae, a colossal gas giant. The explosions triggered spontaneous fusion at the core of Viperidae, transforming the giant into a brown dwarf star. While the UNSC's military strategies only managed to decelerate the Covenant's progress, internal discord was brewing between the Sanshayum and the Sanghili regarding the prolonged Human-Covenant war. Initially, the Sanghili had dutifully adhered to the Prophet's decree to exterminate humanity without hesitation, but after enduring over 25 years of relentless and valiant human resistance against what seemed to be inevitable defeat, the warrior-like Sanghili became increasingly respectful and impressed by humanity. The Sanghili advocated for the induction of humans into the Covenant, a proposal that the Prophets staunchly opposed. The Jirohane, or Brutes, the sole species capable of rivaling the Sanghili supremacy within the Covenant military structure, were swiftly gaining the Prophet's favor, seen as stronger and, most importantly, more loyal. By 2552, the Office of Naval Intelligence, confronted with the bleak prospect of human extinction, acknowledged that humanity could be facing its final months before the Covenant destroyed the remaining inner colonies and launched an assault on Earth. In a desperate bid to stall impending doom, HICOM mandated the recall of all available Spartan IIs to Reach, initiating Operation Red Flag. The operation aimed to pinpoint the Covenant homeworld and apprehend a prophet, with hopes of forcing the Covenant into peace talks. This year saw humanity grappling with its most colossal defeat since the beginning of the war, though it also heralded some of its most triumphant victories, and saw the dismantling of the Covenant stronghold as a galactic entity. At Sigma Octantis IV, a costly triumph was wrested from the Covenant's clutches, marked not only by substantial UNSC casualties, but by an inadvertent lead, facilitated by a spy probe affixed to the destroyer Iroquois. The Covenant launched an assault on Reach shortly thereafter. On the terrestrial frontier, the Spartan IIs secured a Forerunner artifact inscribed with symbols, an artifact the Covenant sought to extricate from Court d'Azur.
What is this stuff?
Knowledge. A birthright from an ancient civilization.
The subsequent fall of Reach and Tribute dealt devastating losses for both factions, though the Covenant would eventually secure a victory. The Pillar of Autumn was among the residual UNSC vessels that managed to escape the carnage, executing a relatively uncalculated jump to a location extrapolated by Cortana using signals from the Sigma Octantis IV artifact, leading to the Forerunner ring world, Halo. The Pillar of Autumn hastened toward its newfound destination, trailed by a fleet of Covenant warships.
Captain Keyes.
Good to see you, Master Chief. Things aren't going well. Cortana did her best, but we never really had a chance.
A dozen Covenant superior battleships against a single Halcyon-class cruiser. With those odds, I'm content with 3, make that 4 kills. Sleep well?
No thanks to your driving, yes.
So you did miss me.
The Covenant would see significant losses at Installation 04, with the survivors from the Pillar of Autumn forming a formidable resistance against them. The Covenant, reluctant to damage the Sacred Ring, were compelled to engage in ground battles against the humans on Halo's surface, stripping them of their customary aerial assault strategies. They would never glass the holy site. The UNSC demonstrated exceptional guerrilla warfare skills on the ring surface, effectively utilizing their firearms and vehicles. Under Spartan John 117's leadership, several successful raids were launched against the Covenant, including a daring rescue of Captain Jacob Keyes from the Truth and Reconciliation.
Coming here was reckless. You two know better than this. Thanks.
The tide of this battle dramatically shifted when the Covenant unintentionally unleashed the Flood, that deadly, ancient parasitic species imprisoned for study within the Halo for millennia. The Flood swiftly spread across the ring, annihilating or assimilating any species they came across, introducing a new dynamic to the war. While trying to understand this new foe, John 117 uncovered Halo's true purpose.
The Flood is spreading. If we activate Halo's defenses, we can wipe them out.
You have no idea how this ring works, do you? Why the Forerunners built it? Halo doesn't kill Flood, it kills their food. Humans, Covenant, whatever. We're all equally edible. The only way to stop the Flood is to starve them to death. And that's exactly what Halo is designed to do. Wipe the galaxy clean of all sentient life. You don't believe me? Ask him.
Is it true?
More or less. Technically, this installation's pulse has a maximum effective radius of 25,000 light years. But once the others follow suit, this galaxy will be quite devoid of life. Or at least any life with sufficient biomass to sustain the Flood.
And made the decision to destroy it by setting off a chain reaction of explosions in the crashed Pillar of Autumn, managing to escape and leaving the Covenant in dismay at the loss of a sacred construct. The Covenant suffered further with the subsequent capture of their flagship Ascendant Justice by the remaining UNSC forces, which resulted in the disgrace and demotion of Supreme Commander Thel 'Vadami. He was branded with the mark of shame and would be executed, but the Prophet of Truth intervened.
Halo's destruction was your error, and you rightly bear the blame. But the Council was overzealous. We know you are no heretic. This is the true face of heresy, one who would subvert our faith and incite rebellion against the High Council.
Thel 'Vadami was appointed the Arbiter and tasked with suppressing the heretical uprising on the Forerunner gas mine over Threshold. The Covenant unexpectedly stumbled upon Earth when the UNSC stealth ship Apocalypso intercepted the Pious Flea. After acquiring a Forerunner artifact, the Apocalypso jumped to Earth, and upon crashing on Luna, the Pious Flea transmitted reconnaissance data, including Earth's coordinates, to the Covenant's leadership. The High Prophet of Truth, having received this information, concealed it due to his own hidden ambitions, secretly mobilizing a substantial fleet to the unyielding Hierophant. Survivors from Installation 04 and Reach learned of this impending threat and, utilizing the seized Covenant flagship Ascendant Justice, set about destroying it. Then the Prophet of Regret independently discovered the location of a crucial Forerunner artifact, oblivious to the fact that this artifact was the human homeworld.
The Forerunners called it Erde Tyrene.
Our calling is clear. We must go there at once. We will take the ships in our command and go to this world immediately. This Erde Tyrene. Take heed, brothers. Your work signals the culmination of our Covenant's holy quest. Hold fast. The great journey is at hand.
He navigated a small fleet to Earth to find a portal to the Ark. Despite being heavily outmatched by UNSC's enhanced orbital defense grid of MAC guns, Regret's flagship penetrated the defenses to New Mombasa.
The message just repeats. Regret, regret, regret.
Catchy. Any idea what it means?
Dear humanity, we regret being alien bastards. We regret coming to Earth. And we most definitely regret the Corps just blew up our raggedy-ass fleet. Hoorah!
Covenant forces commenced their assault, but a retaliatory strike led by Marines and John 117 repelled them, forcing Regret to withdraw. The sudden departure of his carrier inflicted severe damage on the city, and after his retreat, a torrent of Covenant reinforcements, dispatched by the Prophet of Truth, would keep Earth in further fighting. Regret's dilemma deepened when 4 human vessels, including the In Amber Clad, tracked him through slipspace to Delta Halo. John 117, along with ODSTs, landed on Delta Halo with orders to discover Regret's plan. The humans battled through Regret's defenses until they confronted the Prophet. However, High Charity, having discovered Delta Halo, dispatched phantom dropships to aid Regret, only to be called back by the Prophet of Truth in his scheme to depose the Sangheili. John 117 assassinated Regret, shaking the Covenant's political hierarchy.
Bad news. The Phantoms are turning around. The fleet is preparing to fire on our position.
Truth ordered his forces to glass the temple containing Regret's body. John 117 barely escaped, only to be captured by the Gravemind, who intended to foil the Covenant's great journey. With the potential to radically alter the personality and morality of John 117, like the Gravemind had done with the greatest Forerunner warrior, the Didact.
I am a monument to all your sins.
While most human forces from In Amber Clad sought the Index at Delta Halo's library, a key to activating Halo. Initially, the Covenant underestimated the Index's significance, until Arbiter Thel Vadami procured 343 Guilty Spark during his mission against the Heretics. Informed of the Index, the Arbiter was dispatched to retrieve it. Despite the abrupt release of the Flood, he succeeded in capturing it, even kidnapping Miranda Keyes and Sergeant Johnson in the process. The Index was then seized by Tartarus, under the Prophet's directive, igniting the Great Schism.
And the Prophets learn of this, but they will take your head when they learn. Fool. They ordered me to do it.
This turmoil culminated in Tartarus' death and an uneasy alliance between Sangheili and humans, preventing Delta Halo's activation. Meanwhile, the Flood overwhelmed High Charity, claiming the Prophet of Mercy and consolidating the Prophet of Truth's control over the Covenant Empire.
Silence fills the empty grave now that I am gone. But my mind is not at rest, for questions linger on. I will ask, and you will answer.
All right. Shoot.
Before the Halo incident, the top-secret UNSC colony of Onyx was established as the central base and training locale for the Spartan 3 program. Unbeknownst to the UNSC, Onyx was actually a colossal Forerunner construct, crucial to the Halo array, constructed from trillions of Sentinels. After John 117 annihilated Alpha Halo, this disruption awakened the Sentinels and initiated the closure of the portal to the Shield world within the planet's core. During this period, a select group of Spartan 3s were undergoing an elite training session on the surface. When the humans failed to communicate the correct counter-responses, the Sentinels redesignated the Reclaimers as a primitive subspecies and initiated extermination protocols. Kurt 051 led the Spartan 3s in a resistance effort against the Sentinels, until Dr. Catherine Halsey reached Onyx and explained the broader context of what was going on. Understanding the transformative potential of the Forerunner tech hidden within Onyx's core, and how it could be essential to the human war effort, Halsey used the Forerunner tech to convey a message to Fleet Admiral Sir Terrence Hood, calling for backup. In response, Blue Team was dispatched to Onyx, seizing a Covenant destroyer to ensure timely arrival. At the same time, Sangheili troops commanded by Imperial Admiral Zaitan Jar Wattenry dispatched a fleet to Onyx to secure the hallowed artifacts against the Jiralhani. Zaitan, along with the bulk of his fleet, met their demise due to a UNSC Nova bomb retrieved from Reach before learning of the outcome of this mission. Fleet Master Voro Nar Manticre's fleet reached Onyx, dismantling numerous Sentinels in orbit before encountering UNSC units down in the recently revealed Forerunner City. Manticre spearheaded the Covenant assault on the ground, until a UNSC battle group with ancillary Sentinel support annihilated most of the Sangheili vessels, with a lone ship managing to flee after reinforcements from Joyous Exaltation arrived. Below the surface, the Spartans located the core room antechamber, fending off numerous Covenant soldiers before being compelled to withdraw into the core's shield world. Kurt 051 made the ultimate sacrifice, activating 2 Fenris nuclear devices, eliminating the entire Covenant battalion. After sealing the core, Onyx disintegrated into trillions of Sentinels that secured the construct. The surviving Sangheili, their numbers severely diminished, formed an unprecedented alliance with humanity under the Arbiter's command. After the Flood's compromise of High Charity, the Prophet of Truth maneuvered his residual fleet towards Earth, endeavoring to finalize the mission initiated by his occupying forces there.
All of you vermin, cowering in the dirt, thinking, what, I wonder, that you might escape the coming fire? No, your world will burn until its surface is but glass, and not even your demon will live to creep, blackened from its hole to mar the reflection of our passage, the culmination of our journey. For your destruction is the will of the gods.
Unbeknownst to him, a Spartan 2 had secretly hitched a ride on his dreadnought, and when Truth reached Earth, intense combat had already erupted in space and on the ground between the UNSC and Covenant forces. Weeks of relentless warfare left the UNSC home fleet on the brink of annihilation. The aggressing Covenant fleet also suffered substantial losses and concentrated their efforts on a colossal Forerunner structure discovered near the remnants of New Mombasa. With John 117's arrival, the residual UNSC troops initiated an offensive, overwhelming Covenant defenses and eventually assailing the Prophet of Truth's Forerunner dreadnought. Regrettably, even atmospheric Mac barrages couldn't penetrate the vessel's defenses, allowing Truth to activate the portal and escape. The situation became even more chaotic with an unforeseen Flood assault, though the prompt intervention of the Sangheili eliminated the Flood threat, but not before Master Chief secured a message from Cortana, who had remained on High Charity. Cortana's communique revealed a way to halt the Flood located beyond the portal.
It's not safe. The Gravemind, it knows I'm in the system.
It's just a message.
Let it play.
But it doesn't know about the portal, where it leads. On the other side, there's a solution, a way to stop the Flood, without firing the remaining Halo rings.
The final confrontation, 28 years after a nervous grunt fired that first shot, occurred on December 11th, 2552. A united detachment of human and Sangheili troops traversed the portal, leading them to the Ark, located just outside the Milky Way. Upon arrival, they were immediately besieged by the Covenant fleet orbiting the Ark, and despite being outmatched 3-1, the United Fleet achieved victory over Truth's Jiralhani forces, while UNSC soldiers were dispatched to the Ark's surface to thwart Truth, who was on the brink of initiating the Halo array from the Ark Citadel. Under Master Chief's leadership, UNSC troops overpowered the lingering Covenant forces on the Ark. The battle intensified with the advent of High Charity. Amidst the spreading Flood, Master Chief and the Arbiter succeeded in neutralizing Truth, who met his end amidst Flood infection at the hands of the Arbiter. Master Chief halted the Halo array, saving all life within its range. The fall of Truth signaled the virtual cessation of the hostilities, with the shattered Covenant forces unable to continue.
The voice of the Covenant! So, you must be silenced.
The Flood, however, persisted as a menace, but were eradicated by John 117, the Arbiter, Cortana, and Sergeant Johnson by activating the standalone replacement halo above the Ark.
Oh, hello. Wonderful news. The installation is almost complete.
Terrific.
Yes, isn't it? I have begun my simulations. No promises, but initial results indicate this facility should be ready to fire in just a few more days.
We don't have a few more days.
But a premature firing will destroy the Ark.
Deal with it.
Will destroy this installation. Unacceptable! Unacceptable! Absolutely unacceptable! Protocol dictates action! I see now that helping you was wrong! You are the child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner. But this ring is mine.
Kick his ass. Don't ever let her go. Send me out with a bang.
Annihilating Installation 08 and severely impairing Installation 00. Although Forward Unto Dawn managed to navigate through the portal's subsequent collapse bisected the ship. Isolated in the ship's aft section, John 117 entered cryosleep, ultimately drifting to the Forerunner shield world of Requiem, and back home was mourned as presumably dead, leaving humanity to lament the loss of their greatest warrior. And sadly, in the fog of war, fighting across light years, there were unnecessary losses even after the war had officially ended. During the battle for Earth, Grey Team intercepted a message indicating Condition Endgame, signaling that the Covenant had infiltrated the Sol system and the protective measures of the Cole Protocol had failed. Unable to approach the heavily fortified Sanghelios, Grey Team shifted their focus to the colony world of Glyke, inhabited by billions of Sangheli. Although the war had concluded, Grey Team's ship bore a malfunctioning deep space communication device, preventing the receipt of any orders to halt or retreat. In December 2552, shortly after the peace accord with Thelvadam and the Fleet of Retribution, at a time when humans were finally at peace with an alien force, Grey Team obliterated Glyke with a Nova Bomb. The ensuing blast impaired their vessel, compelling Grey Team to abandon ship via their lifeboat and leaving them to drift amidst the remnants of this world, suspended in cryo chambers. On March 3, 2553, a memorial was constructed on a hillside adjacent to the portal to the Ark, serving as a poignant reminder of the billions of individuals who perished during the war, not far from where the librarian herself would see her final moments, which was now eons ago during the Forerunner Flood War. John 117's tag was incorporated and his status marked as MIA by the UNSC, as a Spartan is never declared dead. A symbolic handshake between Lord Hood and the Arbiter was the unofficial beginning of a new era, leading to the establishment of a formal ceasefire between the UNSC and the Arbiter's Swords of Sanghelios, followed by the Treaty of 2552, which brought an official closure to the war between them. The terms of the treaty prohibited either party from venturing back to the remnants of Installation 04. Setting foot on that halo would be a breach of this peace accord. In 2553, during her introductory address, Ruth Jarrett, the president of the Unified Earth Government, depicted a vision for humanity's future and laid out its foreign policy objectives. She vowed to rebuild and declared humanity would reclaim its deserved status in the universe. While the humans were prepared for peaceful coexistence with other civilizations, surrendering to alien hostiles was no longer an option. Although the prevailing sentiment within governmental and military realms inclined toward peace with the Sangheli, the UNSC's Office of Naval Intelligence secretly endeavored to incapacitate the Sangheli, never fully trusting them, worrying that they could simply be a future enemy, and viewing them as paramount to the obstacle of human dominance of the galaxy. And the cessation of the Covenant War didn't usher in an enduring tranquility for humanity. New confrontations were quick to surface. There would be fragments of the Covenant, like Jul 'Mdama's forces, and with no longer having a unifying alien threat, there was the return of insurrectionist groups like the New Colonial Alliance. The UNSC held a considerable edge against these diminished factions of the Covenant, leveraging advancements like the UNSC Infinity and the Spartan Fours, proving to everyone, most importantly themselves, that humanity was certainly not a lower alien life form. These enhanced resources and technologies enabled superior tactic positioning as humans sought to re-establish their empire across the stars, making it stronger than any human empire in history. And just like the precursors had envisioned millions of years ago, you can see the following era as defined by humanity taking up the mantle of responsibility. That's it for their story, and we'll pick it up in part 3. I didn't really expect this when writing these videos, but perhaps guided by my Gaius, the librarian spirit embedded in us, I wanted to keep each video around an hour long, and I think it's worked out perfect in 3 clearly defined parts. The original human species that had their proper role stolen by the Forerunners, to live under the alien thumb and fear of the 10 million plus year old empire, losing the war and being de-evolved, only to prove their indomitable spirit, taking to the stars again, only to be met by the latest dominant empire in the form of the Covenant, defeating them and taking up their rightful place in the galaxy with unexpected alien allies. Part 3 will see humanity coming to terms with old friends like Guilty Spark and the Librarian, and foes from Covenant remnant forces to the reborn Didact, and even the dark descent of humanity's greatest AI. I hope to see you in part 3 soon. Please hit that like button, it really is the best way to help me out. Subscribe to see more, and check out these other videos, I'm sure you'll like them. But most important of all, remember, never let a non-human intelligence tell you you're inferior, and may the domain preserve you, always.